Hello, and welcome back to Earth of Mystery. Today we'll be going over the details that unfolded one of the most horrific mass murders in American history. This may easily be the most notorious murders in the state of Iowa. Additionally, please be on the lookout throughout the video for any familiar teasers that may pop up. When spotted, comment below what you saw and its timeline, and I will pin your comment. The Moores were an affluent family that were well known and well liked in their community of Villisca, Iowa. The Moores consisted of Joe Moore, which had 43 years, Sarah Moore, 39, and their four children. Herman, which was 11, Catherine was 10, Boyd had 7, and Paul was 5. On June 9, 1912, Catherine invited her friends Ina May, which was 8 years old, and Lena Stillinger, which was 12, to spend the night at their home. That same evening, the visiting girls and the Moore family attended the Presbyterian church, where they participated in the Children's Day program. The Children's Day service was an end-of-the-year Sunday school program in which Sarah Moore was the co-director, and her children performed their speeches and recitations along with other Sunday school members. On a more normal day, the service typically ended earlier. However, due to the special event, there was some social mingling amongst the parishioners, which extended their stay to around 9:30 p.m. All in all, on a cloudy, damp, and cool night, the Moore family and the two Stillinger girls left the church and made their way to their home, which was around 3 blocks away. They arrived at around 10 p.m., and after quickly changing into their nightgowns, they had some milk and cookies and then retreated to go to bed. It is thought that sometime after midnight, the killer or killers picked up Joe's axe from the backyard and entered the Moore's house. On the morning of June 10, 1912, at around 7:30 a.m., the Moore's neighbor, Mary Peckham, was going about her day performing her chores outside as usual, when she noticed that none of the Moore's family members were out performing their usual daily activities. She thought this was odd, so she decided to go over and knock on their door to ask if everything was all right. When she did, no one answered. She tried the doorknob, but the doors were locked. Mary, concerned, called Ross Moore, which was Joe's brother, and communicated her uneasiness. A little while later, Ross came by the house, and they both knocked on the door and shouted for some time. But there was just no answer, and there seemed to be no movement that could be heard throughout the house either. So Ross took out his spare key and opened up the front door and stepped inside. Walking through the narrow hallway, the first room was the guest bedroom. When Ross opened the door, he saw two figures covered with a blanket sheet and saw a lot of blood throughout the bed. He then quickly ran outside and asked Mary to call Hank Horton because something terrible had happened. Hank was Villisca's primary peace officer. Upon arrival, he searched the Moore's residence completely and found that there was somebody murdered in every bed of the house. The murder weapon was an axe, and it was found leaning against a wall in the bedroom where the Stillinger girls were said to be staying. From here on, the story is more of a reconstruction of events based on evidence and theories of what may have unfolded on the evening of Sunday or early morning hours of Monday, June 10, 1912. The Moores, their 4 children, and the 2 Stillinger girls, who were spending the night, all perished. After a thorough analysis, doctors concluded that the murders had taken place sometime between midnight to 5 a.m. on the fateful Monday. During the investigation that ensued, bizarre discoveries were made. The first was a 4-pound piece of slab bacon leaning against the wall next to the axe. The murderer also had searched dresser drawers for pieces of clothing to cover the mirrors in the house and the glass in the entry doors. Additionally, on the kitchen table was a plate of uneaten food and a bowl of bloody water. As mentioned before, all the victims were found in their beds, their heads covered with bedclothes and beaten almost beyond recognition. From all the victims, it is recounted that Joe received the most blows of them all. This murder was so barbaric that the ceiling in the parents' bedroom and the children's room upstairs showed gouge marks, apparently made by the upswing of the axe when the attack was happening. The Moore family and the Stillinger girls' funeral service were held in Villisca's town square on June 12, 1912, for which thousands of people attended. The National Guard even blocked the street as the hearse moved towards the firehouse where the 8 victims lay. The investigation continued and many suspects were identified. However, and perhaps the one on top of the investigators' list, was a man named Reverend Lynn George Kelly. It was recounted that at around 5 a.m. the morning following the murders, the Reverend left Villisca in a hurry on board a westbound train and allegedly told fellow travelers that there were 8 dead souls back in Villisca, Iowa, butchered in their beds while they slept, he said, even though the bodies had not yet been discovered. Kelly had arrived in Villisca for the first time the Sunday morning of the murders and attended a Sunday school performance by the Stillinger girls before departing early Monday. He then returned 2 weeks later and, posing as a detective, joined a tour of the murder house with a group of investigators. After some additional investigation, a grand jury indicted Kelly for the murders, but after 2 trials, he was ultimately acquitted in November of that same year. From all the potential suspects, Kelly was the only person that was ever indicted. All others were interrogated, but there was no real solid evidence against them. Now, more than 100 years later, no one else has ever been tried for the murders, and the crime remains one of the most horrific, unsolved mass murders in American history. Today, the Moore's family home still stands, after a lady called Martha Lynn and her husband bought the house in 1994, restored it to its original 1912 condition, and it is now a museum and tourist attraction. The house is a familiar sight to paranormal investigators, who have proclaimed it to be one of the most haunted places in America. Visitors that have stayed in the house regularly report emotional, physical, and supernatural disturbances during their overnight visits. Visitors to the house often report experiencing strange paranormal activity. Some have reported seeing the ghostly apparition of a man with an axe roaming the halls of the house, while others have heard the faint screams of children in the night. One particularly recent event was in October of 2014. A paranormal investigator called Robert Stephen Larson visited the home with a group of friends. While he was alone in a bedroom and the rest of his party was outside, was recounted that all of a sudden he frantically called some of his friends for help throughout their two-way radios. Upon reaching him, they found that Robert had been stabbed in the chest in an apparent self-inflicted wound. According to the police report, the incident occurred at around 12:40 a.m., which is within the time frame that the Moores and Stillinger girls' murders actually took place. Luckily, Robert recovered from his injuries, but he has never spoken publicly about what occurred that day. Nonetheless, this adds a new layer of terror to the already haunted house. Despite the incident, the house remains open for tours and overnight stays today. Visitors are warned about the house's dark history and reputation, and they are advised to be respectful while visiting. The owners of the house continue to maintain it as a historical site and a place to educate people about the tragedy that occurred there in 1912. If you are still here, many thanks for watching, and again, please like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future content. As you can see, this channel is just starting out, so please feel free to comment below with any suggestions or recommendations that you may have. I hope to see you at the next one.